moment of silence for the community of Tumble Ridge. We hold in our hearts the lives lost, the family shattered, and the community forever changed by this tragedy. Let us honor the memories of those who are no longer with us and send strength to those who are grieving. Let us hold space for compassion, for unity, and for the hope that such pain will never be felt again. May our silence be a gesture of solidarity, a reminder that even in the deepest sorrow, no one stands alone. Let's take this moment to honor, love, and support a community that is deeply hurting. Thank you, everyone. I would like to start by doing a recognition of territories. I would like to acknowledge that we're conducting this meeting on the unceded traditional territories of Hupuchesset and Shosat First Nations, and we're grateful for the opportunity to do so. We also have directors calling in from other territories. I would like to also acknowledge those nations and express our deep gratitude and our respect. Notes to attendees and delegates, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube to the Regional District website. If anyone is watching at home and you have questions at the end of the meeting, please send them to responses@acrd.bc.ca and we'll respond to them at the end of the meeting. Next, we'll do introductions. We'll go around the room first, and I started to my right this morning, so today I'll start to my left. Would you like to start, Daniel, please?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Sayam, the CAO for the ACRD.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Sparrow, and I represent Cherry Creek.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Roth, and I'm the director for Beaver Creek.
Hello, Clama Penny Cote. I'm the electoral area director for Sprout Lake. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Cynthia Dick, General Manager of Administrative Services.
And good afternoon, Alex Thayer, General Manager of Planning and Development.
Thank you. Now we'll go online. Director Beckett.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Bob Beckett, representing Bamfield Area A.
Director Boyko.
Fred Boyko, Electoral Area B for Beaufort. Thank you.
Director Steer.
Yes, good afternoon. Councillor Steer, appointed Director, District of Tofino.
Director Siga.
Beta Siga, Director for Area C, Long Beach.
Director Coots.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Mariah Coots, Hishtoshta Hochakras, representing the Hochakras Tribe Government. Happy to be here. Click up.
Director Johnson.
Afternoon, Kirsten Johnson, Director for the Toquat Nation.
Director McEwen.
Good afternoon, Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet.
Karen, are you there to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Karen Freely, Protective Services Manager with the ACRD.
And Tanya, are you there to introduce yourself as well?
Hi, Tanya Crothers, Solid-Based Manager for ACRD.
And we just had our Director of Finance into the room. Would you like to introduce yourself, please, Terry?
Good afternoon, Terry Falling, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. My name is Debbie Haggard. I am Councillor for the City of Port Alberni and Vice Chair of the Board of Directors for the Alberni-Clutha Regional District. Chair Jack is not able to be with us today, so I will be chairing the meeting. I'm happy to be here. We have an agenda in front of us. We have one late item that we're regarding a highway closure, and I'm going to put that under 6D, under highway closure, and when we get to that point, I'll read out the notice. Is there any other additions from directors? Seeing none, is there any other additions from the corporate office?
No other additions.
Thank you. Could I motion to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Sparrow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Any declarations or conflict of interest? Director Coots?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a direct conflict or declaration. However, I do have a hard stop today at 4:30. My apologies. We have a community event that we are hosting. Click on.
I am hoping you're going to be finished well before 4:30. Thank you, but thank you for letting me know. Adoption of minutes. We have the minutes from the Board of Directors meeting held on January 28th. Is any errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I motion that the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held on January 28th, 2026 be adopted? Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Beckett. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next, we have the Committee of the Whole meeting on January 28th, 2026, and the Personnel Committee meeting held on February 2nd, 2026. Is there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I motion the Board of Directors receive many minutes from B and C? Moved by Director Cote, second by Director Roth. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We have petitions, delegations, and presentations. First with us is Dr. Charmaine Ans, a medical health officer for Island Health, and Dr. Nick Davey, air quality meteorologist from the Ministry of Environment and Parks, and Dr. Sarah Henderson, the scientific director of environmental health, BC Center for Disease Control, and they're all co-presenting on the effects of wildfire smoke on air quality, with the focus on recent wildfires within or close to the Alberni-Kokot Regional District and emergency preparedness. And Dr. Ans, you're going to be starting today?
Thank you very much. I'm starting as the person in the room to make sure my colleagues were introduced, but thank you very much, Chair Haggard, for doing that. And with that, I am just looking to Nick and Sarah, and I will advance the slides as you direct me. So my colleagues are going to go first, and I'll be the punctuation mark at the end about public health response. But thank you very much for the invitation to be here, and of course, we're quite grateful for that opportunity. So as you introduced us, it's Dr. Nick Davey from Ministry of Environment, air quality meteorologist, Dr. Sarah Henderson from BC CDC, scientific director of environmental health, and our leading expert in the province for air, and then myself as your local medical health officer. Nick?
Perfect. Thanks for the intro. Hello, everyone. In terms of the presentation today, I'm just going to start with, I don't have very many slides. It's just 5 slides really. And we're going to start very broad, just talk about the big picture in terms of wildfire in the province. And then we'll zoom into Port Alberni and then talk about droughts and what we can expect in the future. To start off, large scale. So 2023 was the worst fire season on record by far. This was predominantly in the Northeast in the Prince George Fire Center. And one particular fire is the Donnie Creek Fire. It was the largest fire in provincial history record. It smoldered underground 2023 and reignited in 2024. And if you imagine that fire was a perfect square, it would have been 80 kilometers along each edge. So burning, 600,000 hectares. 2025 was certainly better than 2023. However, we're still at nearly double the 20-year average, so 886,000 hectares burned in 2025, compared to the 20-year average of just over 500,000. In terms of causes of these wildfires, in the top right slide, we can see all of BC, so 54% caused by lightning, 44% caused by human. Slightly different in the Coastal Fire Center, where we have 40% caused by lightning and 56% caused by human. Next slide, please. So before we get into the statistics, I just wanted to remind people of the scale that we're talking about when we're talking about wildfire smoke particles. So on the top left, you have probably what is a familiar image of a human hair. And if we're thinking about that scale, we're talking about PM 2.5. So this is particulate matter, either a liquid or a solid, with a diameter of less than 2.5 microns. Relative to a human hair, you can think about that as about 25 times smaller than the thickness of a human hair. If we take a look at the figure in the bottom left-hand side, we have on the y-axis of that figure, we have PM 2.5 concentration in micrograms per cubic meter. Along the x-axis, we have years, so 2014 to 2025, and this is from the Port Alberni Elementary School sensor. In terms of things on the data, I'll just walk you through the figure. So the air quality objective is the red dotted line you can see on the figure. That's 25 micrograms per cubic meter. The yellow single line that you can see sort of in the downward trend is the maximum non-wildfire concentration. And things to point out that in 2025, this is the first year on record that the maximum non-wildfire 24-hour average concentration is less than the air quality objective, which is a good sign, and it really is an indicator of some of the positive effects of air quality management. It speaks to, well, although it's hard to attribute this downward trend to any one particular thing, it is encouraging in terms of air quality management, in terms of things like the open burn smoke control regulations and the wood stove exchange programs having a positive impact on the air quality in Port Alberni. In terms of the other data, there's 98th percentile in blue. Again, you can see the downward trend, and then the wildfire influences in that little shaded yellow area at the top of the bar graph. For 2025, that is almost entirely from the Mount Underwood fire, although the 2025 data still needs some data validation, so that may change just a little bit. The Underwood fire in general, August 11th as a discovery date, declared out December 8th, hectares burned 3,500-ish, so about 35 kilometers squared. And then in terms of the rank of that fire, it was sitting at, when it was at its hottest, as a rank 5 fire. And so that means extremely vigorous, rapid spread via the crowns, so the fire spreading along the crowns of the fires, and limited indirect safe areas. So really pretty much at the top of the scale for fire behavior. Next slide, please. So these next two slides are mostly satellite images, just to show you that it was not just the local area impacted by the smoke from this fire. So August 11th, no sign. Next slide. And then August 12th, you can see offshore winds pooling down into Barkley Sound and out into the Pacific Ocean. Next slide. Wind change, August 13th a.m. So the wind now pushing onshore. You can see that smoke plume pushing all the way down into Sooke in the Salish Sea and heading over towards Ladysmith and North Cowichan. Next slide, please. Yeah. And then before the clouds roll in, you can see it pushing over towards the mainland and around Courtenay area. Next slide. And after August 13th p.m., we lose our satellite images due to cloud cover. Next slide. So in this one, a few days later, August 20th, and this just gives you an idea of the scale of that fire. If you take a look at the bottom of the screen, all that area in black is the area burned, and it's approximately on the same sort of scale as the town of Port Alberni itself. So quite a large scale fire. All right, next slide, please. So a couple other ways that we can measure air quality impacts. So in the top left, we have modeled air quality impacts. So this is a modeled concentration for PM 2.5 put out by Environment and Climate Change Canada. And it did a reasonably good job. It's a model, so it's imperfect. But in terms of the scale, you can see that that model was predicting concentrations between 100 and 250 micrograms per cubic meter, which aligned quite well with our sensor data on the ground. Also of note, just taking a look at how far that smoke traveled into the province, probably measurable impacts halfway across the province and up way beyond the northern tip of Vancouver Island. It's a little bit complicated by the fire down in Washington, some of that smoke down in Washington, but most of the stuff in this figure is from the Underwood fire. Bottom left-hand tile, we can see Port Alberni Elementary, PM 2.5 1 hour average. So this is measured data, maximum concentrations at 268 micrograms per cubic meter. And all those peaks in that shaded area are from the Underwood fire. The only other fire of note that showed up in the data is the Wesley Ridge fire, which is those two small peaks to the left of that fire. In terms of the impacts, it wasn't just Port Alberni, of course, impacted. In the two slides on the right, you can see Port Alberni on August 14th was actually largely spared, and most of it was much more impacted on the eastern coast of the island, and especially Courtney, where concentrations were in the hundreds of micrograms per cubic meter. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this is the slide for talking about what to expect in the future. So what we've got here in the top slide, it's a lot of numbers, but if you just squint your eyes, we've got drought levels, and the legend is essentially how severe the drought is from a 0 to a 5, with the reds and the browns being the worst or most extreme droughts. Data here is from 2016 to 2025, and I think what's worthy and important to point out is really in the last 5 years, there are lengthy periods of level 4 and level 5 drought. So these are extremely dry or exceptionally dry periods. And then there was a little bit of a reprieve in 2025 during the Underwood fire. So the Underwood fire is shown around August 8th-ish, just on the slide there. And you'll notice that the drought levels are not as bad as in the previous 4 years by far. And so just looking forward, well, one other thing to point out is that the figure in the bottom right is a precipitation relative anomaly, and that's for June, July, August of 2025. And if you can see the figure, central Vancouver Island down in the bottom left is sitting at somewhere between -70 to -85% of the precipitation that it would normally get according to a 10-year average. So very low on precipitation for those 3 months. But the drought most certainly could have been worse, as we had seen in previous years. Now, of course, looking forward, predictions is difficult to know what's going to happen in the future, but I think it's reasonable to expect more years with level 4 and level 5 droughts, and to have a fire similar to the Underwood starting in conditions like those of 2022 or 2023. I think we can expect those fires would burn hotter and longer and further into the fall, especially if you look at 2022, where there was severe drought all the way into the end of October. And that's all I have for you today. So with that, I will pass it over to whoever's speaking next. I guess that will be
Me.
That will be Sarah. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. I am joining you today from the never ceded territory of the Stalo people, and specifically the Camel First Nation and what we now know as Mission, British Columbia. I want to walk you through a little bit about the health effects of wildfire smoke. The primary concern when we're talking about wildfire smoke is those small particles that Nick talked about. There's other gases in smoke that also have health effects, but we really focus on those small particles because they can travel deep into the lungs, right down to the place where the alveolar oxygen exchange happens. So at the ends of the branches of your lungs, you have these things that are like little bubbles of grapes, and that's where there's exchange between your blood and your lungs for oxygen. And once they get deep into the lungs like that, they can cause irritation. Obviously, they're a foreign body in your lungs, and inflammation, because your body has kind of an immunological response to these particles. That means that they have an effect on the entire body. And the very smallest of the particles can cross into the bloodstream and therefore have access to every organ system in the body. So we think of wildfire smoke as a whole body pollutant, but the lungs are the first point of contact. Next slide, please. Now, the effect that smoke can have is highly dependent on a couple of things. Stage of life really matters. So in those early stages of life, during pregnancy, infancy, and childhood, the body is growing very rapidly. There's a lot of cellular division. There's a lot of opportunity for smoke exposure to disrupt those processes. And for infants and small children, they actually breathe a lot compared to their body weight. So they're more exposed than adults tend to be. As people get older, they tend to be more active. They're outdoors more. They might be doing more demanding work and have higher exposures because of those factors. And then as they age even further, there's going to be degeneration of the organ systems and lack of resiliency to the exposures, especially for everyone here, for anybody who has any kind of pre-existing health condition, and especially respiratory disease. So I think of respiratory disease as the canary in the coal mine of wildfire smoke. Anybody whose health is sort of knocked down on a day-by-day basis because of a chronic condition is going to be more sensitive to these exposures. Next slide, please. Now, we have to distinguish between the acute effects of wildfire smoke and the longer-term effects of wildfire smoke. The acute effects are the things that are happening when it's smoky because it's smoky, and the longer lasting effects or the chronic effects are the things that happened into the future because it was smoky at a certain time period or because people were exposed to smoke over years of their lives. So let's focus here on the acute effects first and what we know about wildfire smoke with respect to other sources of air pollution. In general, we see that wildfire smoke affects every organ system in the body, and the magnitude of the effect of the PM 2.5 from wildfires is similar to the magnitude of the effect of PM 2.5 from other sources like industry or traffic. However, what's different is that wildfire smoke has a much larger effect on respiratory outcomes. Again, people with asthma, COPD, chronic bronchitis, any of those things that affect respiratory health on a day-by-day basis, they are going to amplify the effects of wildfire smoke. Next slide, please. Now, when we're thinking about the longer lasting effects, things are a little bit different. The similarity between wildfire smoke and other sources of air pollution, again, it seems to affect every organ system in the body, and we see the effects more pronounced in the most susceptible people. So those people who have pre-existing conditions, those people who are perhaps living in poverty, those types of susceptibilities really amplify the risks associated with smoke exposure. What's different on some of these chronic conditions, such as heart failure, dementia, and stroke? So that's very likely because of the magnitude of these exposures when they occur. They can be so high. And now we're in a place in the changing climate where we see these exposures, almost every year in the province compared with the 20 years previously where we would have a bad wildfire season once in a while. We now have bad wildfire seasons almost all the time. Next slide, please. This is some insight into what happened in Port Alberni when it was smoky. The smoke you can see down on the bottom there in blue, there was these smoky days, which Nick already presented. And you can see in the top slide that there were extra inhalers for asthma puffers dispensed in the region while that smoke was happening. We estimate there's about 100 extra puffers dispensed over what we would normally expect. So clear evidence of an impact and a significant impact on the respiratory health for people who use those puffers. Next slide, please. And then when we look at people who went to the physician to see their doctor about a respiratory complaint, we see increases in those complaints as well. And we estimate about 15 extra doctor visits for respiratory complaints during this period. Again, a significant impact, but not a huge impact. Well, I didn't show it here, but when we looked at the emergency room data, we really did not see evidence that there was extra emergency room visits because of this smoke exposure. So hopefully that helps to give you a little bit of context and how this affected the health in the community. And I will hand it over to Charmaine.
Thank you, Nick and Sarah. And I'm going to be really quick. I only have 2 slides. And that's I had the response slides, and I changed the words to prepare to respond because wildfires, as both of my colleagues have mentioned, are now the norm, and it would be remiss for us not to expect it and to be prepared for it. The primary goal of any preparation is to reduce smoke exposure. And, based on the evidence we've just seen and previous impacts we've seen on Vancouver Island, I think one of our worst wildfire seasons, I can't remember what year that was those wildfires from Russia. So air travels everywhere, so it's hard to escape it when the air is not great. So we need to prepare for it. And there's also a combined issue that oftentimes these events are happening when we have extreme heat. So extreme heat, if you have to prioritize one over the other, it's extreme heat, because that's more immediate impact and has a higher mortality rate. So, but oftentimes these things go together. So it's not just one or the other. So we have to prepare for that. So you prepare as an individual, have a health plan. Don't wait for the event to actually get your extra puffer or to have your puffer. Have a plan with your physician if you know you're someone who's more at risk in advance. So you have your medication, you have your puffers, you have your plan. That your home is prepped in advance. That means inside and outside, whatever you need to do to be ready for that. And that's great if you have a home. So this actually leads us to the issues for those people who are not home housed or are unstably housed, and how we as a community help prepare for that as well. Have a plan for work if you work outside and the air is bad. What's going to be your plan? And talk to your employer. As a community, what do? You're going to strive for the best air all year round. That is by far the most important thing. That's one of the most important things. There's 2. One is, as a community, you're going to have the best air all year round. We saw how there's been significant downward trend over time with air quality in the Alberni Valley. You're a valley, you can't help it. You're going to have inversions and other issues with air quality. But the more the community, the municipality, the local area can keep their air good all the time, the better. Identifying locations for clean and cool air in events, like you did this with the Mount Underwood fire. That's important. That's an equity issue. And always consider equity in any planning, because not everybody fits how we would like things to fit. And to know your sources of truth. This is not new information every year. There's what it means to be prepared and to respond in a bad air event. Those health messages are really consistent over time. So know your sources, know your source of truth. And my last slide is, I was the medical health officer involved with the Island Health Response as it relates to the Mount Underwood, and I was just so impressed by the ACRD and Tishat First Nation in the communication, the calm, the proactive. I felt very proud to live in this region. And I just want to thank you for that. And of course, always a huge shout out to our BC Wildfire Service and the amazing service and dedication they provided. And so just to recognize that the ACR opened up Air Quality Center. You had a good number of people attend because that's where they needed to go for cool and clean air. And then for individuals and families, again, that messaging of how to stay, how to limit your exposure. So that doesn't mean you stay inside all the time, just limit the amount of exposure and stay cool and hydrated. Very important. From a population level, I would advocate that in addition to keeping your air as good as possible all the time, because air quality has an impact over time, that cumulative impact is housing. And so the more people that are housed stably, the better off everyone in the community is. So the best response is being prepared, and thank you very much for your leadership for the Mount Underwood fire, and I hope we don't talk about this again next year. Thanks.
I think that's one thing we'd absolutely agree on. I see some members from the Air Quality Council here. Did you want to say anything or?
Yes, they
add
are.
to the
Yes, I
conversation
want to
at all?
recognize, thank you for doing that, Chair. Air Quality Council Bernadette, Keith, Bernadette, and Judy.
Well, thank you for well, thank you for the presentation, Charmaine and Sarah and Nick. We were in Bamfield at the time during the wildfire, and we were basically watching from afar. And you know, being air quality advocates, of course, that was on our minds, and we were very encouraged to see the response that was made at the Emergency Management Center and the whole wildfire approach. And in general, you know, very gratifying to see the regional district's response to building the bylaws for improved air quality in the valley. And this is a piece of it. And thank you very much for your curiosity on the issue. And we look forward to continuing to see improvements in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Steer, you had a question?
He's a doctor.
There's so many doctors on the lineup today.
Thank you. And through the chair, very much appreciate this presentation. It has a personal note, and the question might be directed to Dr. Henderson. Both my boys work for BC Wildfire Service, and one of them was actually on the Underwood fire. And one of the and speaking with our Minister of Health, who's good friends with both my sons as well, I had a question around the long-term impacts of those frontline workers. They're not considered forest fighter or firefighters; are considered forestry technicians. And obviously, the exposure is extreme to them, mostly in those early 20-year frames. And I'm wondering if there's been any work done on the monitoring of those long-term effects. We're up to almost 1,000 firefighters a season now. And the implications around those, as you've clearly pointed out through this presentation, the exposure risk to those potentially involved. I'm wondering if there's any work being done in the monitoring of those BC wildfire fighters. And thank you, Charmaine, for that shout out for the BC Wildfire Service. And if there is not, I'm wondering if there's a way that we can advocate to have that type of work being done on those frontline workers.
I will tell you what I know, and with the caveat that what I know is likely incomplete. Yes, there is. This is an active area of research for the BC Wildfire Service. For those in the interior, you might know that there's an entire new program of research at Thompson Rivers University related to wildfires and wildland firefighters. This is an area of increasing interest in Alberta as well. So I will say we are learning things now. And there's going to be a lot more evidence in the years ahead because of the funding that has gone into some of these programs. So it's underway. I think it's quite clear at this stage of the literature that the risks are significant, as we would expect them to be. Everything we can do to help protect the health of wildland firefighters is important. One of the things that I think there's increasing interest in, not only for first responders, but for the general public, is what are the potential protections offered by pharmaceutical interventions? So we know that if people are taking statins, for example, they do better in particulate air pollution than people who are not taking statins. Should we be looking at some of those pharmaceutical options for people who are putting themselves at such high risk due to the direct impacts of fire and the less direct impacts of smoke?
Next, we have Director Cote, then Director Roth. Please go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for this presentation. I'm very aware of the problems with air pollution when it comes to the fire smoke. I spent quite a few days in my house this past summer because I can't go out into the smoke because it definitely affects my lungs. And so preventative measures, and I feel very bad for those people who are out in the elements that can't get away from the smoke. I just want to point out to the board that we do have a resolution at AVICC regarding firefighting equipment. And I think that we should continue lobbying for the province to have proper firefighting strategy going forward from this point on. We know that fires are going to be happening continually. I think that we really need to focus on being able to put those fires out as soon as possible. Get on them and put them out before they get to the stage where they've spread so far that we can't manage them. I know from the Dog Mountain fire, watching that, it was very strainful to just sit and watch for the first while it grew and grew with no fire attack. So hopefully the province is going to step up their strategies on firefighting. As far as your presentation, you said you've got data from the Alberni school, I believe it is. And it showed how the smoke dispersed in a lot of other areas and how it spiked in ours, but then it wasn't quite as high. That doesn't say that it doesn't linger around in the valley in different areas. Once it gets over that hill to Sprout Lake where I am, it tends to stay in that valley area as well. Yeah, understanding the more that we understand about air quality and how it affects our health, I think is super important. So thank you so much for your work. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Roth.
Thank you. I'm just curious if the particulate from wildfire smoke, if it affects water quality, because we don't have filtration and we have open water sources. So is it enough to affect water quality?
It's an excellent question. It can certainly impact water chemistry when smoke settles onto water. The impacts tend not to be huge. They have been documented in some places. One of the bigger concerns is that smoke mobilizes nutrients into water and makes fresh water more susceptible to harmful algal blooms. So that's something that's been documented in many locations, is that smoke impacted fresh water is more likely to bloom because of the impacts of that smoke.
And if I could just add to that, because in addition to those small particles, one of our big concerns is what's going to happen in the water source as a result of the fire. So you lose your riparian zone, you can have slope instability, you have maybe you have your fire and it's fine for the summer, but then we have our first big rainfall in the fall, and then all of that organic matter goes into the source. Really, we're very concerned about what it means to have wildfires near our, especially source water, like but surface supply water. It's a big concern. And then of course, retardants going into the supply, we always are concerned about that. But yeah, so there's many factors that are of a concern, as in addition to losing your water supply, so you don't have distribution. Yeah.
I just think there can be nothing more important than the air that we breathe or the water we drink. So it's kind of a biggie.
Thank you, Director Sparrow. Then Director Cote. Please go ahead, Director Sparrow.
Thank you. I'm going to build on something Director Cote said about the air quality and the sensors. You have the one sensor in Alberni School, which is the regulated sensor, but we have a bunch of other sensors around the valley. And that really helps out when we get the swirling motion with the smoke we have in the valley here. And I think that was part of the basis used for opening up the center. I'm not incorrect for the breathing. When we get to a certain point, we open up the center for the quality for air. I think it was due to because of the fact that we have the one on the Bernie School, but we have the restaurant in the valley to help monitor where the concentrations are and what they can do. Yeah, and what they do. So hopefully in the future we can keep all the sensors going and we can see how it works for the wildfires, and we can also look for other things that cause us irritants in the air too. So hopefully that's something we can do. If you want to elaborate on that, or do you know?
I'm looking to Sarah if she wants to say something. So you're referencing the purple air monitors, which are citizen-based monitoring, and I'm not sure if Keith, if you want to say something about that, but you're absolutely right that one location for monitoring doesn't represent the whole area. It represents that particular airspace, but the dynamics of the valley are different. So there is value in knowing. I would say, yeah. Do you want to, Keith, let's just can I give Keith a minute to respond?
Yeah, thank you. So the Air Quality Council did initiate linking the purple air monitors together, and that's reported. And at the moment, I think Chris Alamany is collecting that information. So it's on the Alberni weather site. And I think we had 7 in the valley, but it could be encouraged to have more. It is really interesting, and anybody can go on that purple air site on the internet, and you can actually see where each monitor is in the valley, and you can check the readings. So it's like an open source citizen science project, and it is quite helpful, as Mike said, to integrate the purple air readings with the Alberni Elementary readings, so you can see the similarities and the differences. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Part of the follow-up of this is we are getting industry in town, which is the old APD building. And it'd be nice to get a monitor somewhere close to that so we can see what particular matter comes out of that, because that will be hazardous to health if it gets out. So thank you.
Can I just recognize that Dr. Henderson has popped something into the chat about, Sarah, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, when you're looking for data from Purple Air sensors, you can go to the Purple Air website, but I highly recommend this aqmap.ca website. Those data are reprocessed to reflect some of the parameterization that is appropriate to the Canadian environment. You can also see the school monitor on that website, so it's a really nice look into what's happening in your community, kind of from a Canadian perspective.
Thank you, Director Cote, then Director Boyko. Please go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. Thank you. So one of the effects from forest fire is the runoff. We have a lot of karst in our area, so that I believe that it kind of clogs up that karst, which cleans the water that goes down, runs off the runoff. So our area, our valley, there's a lot of inversion as well. So it stays here and comes back down. And I did notice there was some spikes and a lot of little stuff, and I don't know how the purple monitors work, but I know that in the past there's been problem with farmers burning and also doing clearing, and also forestry burns. But it seems like that those burns are managed better. So I just wanted to point that out. I think that that's being managed better than it has in the past. And I'd really like to see more reuse of our resources than burning. But thanks.
Thank you, Director Boyko. Sorry, did you want to respond
yeah,
to
it's
that?
good to know that site where the air quality monitoring is. And just for reference for Director Sparrow, there's one in the Port Alberni Port Authority building. So that's like a couple hundred meters from the APD mill. And if you look at what they're currently saying right now, it's nice to not live in the city. It's way better air quality out in the district. But I'm sure that changes when we have inversions and other things. But it's nice to have a look at that. Thank you for the information.
Any final questions or comments? I just want to really thank you and your colleagues for coming in today. And I just want to say I've never learned so much in one day since I've been a counselor in 7 years. So thank you so much. And
Again,
thank you
thank
both
you
of
for-
you online for coming as well. We really appreciate the information you've shared today.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I just want you to know I've been an MHO for over 20 years, and I love coming to you guys because you're so easy to be with, and really appreciate the conversation. Thanks.
Next on the agenda, we have Jimmy Hodgson, Vice President of Sustainability and Chief Forester, and Colin Cosman, Manager of Community Relations for Mosaic Forestry Management, and they're going to give us an update on Mosaic. Welcome.
Missed that cue. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us here today. Jimmy Hodgson, VP of Sustainability and Chief Forester for Mosaic, alongside my colleague Cosman, who will introduce him here in a few minutes as I turn the presentation over. So essentially, we're just here to give a bit of an update. As long as I can move forward here. Does not want to move forward. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. All right, so today we'll cover a little bit of an overview. We'll touch on sustainability, drinking water, wildfire management, which will kind of lead into the conversation that was just presented, as well talk a little bit about recreation and community partnerships. So just a reminder, and for those that don't know us, we are 100% Canadian owned. We do manage both private and public tenure here on the island and on the coast, all the way from down in Sooke through a fairly significant footprint here in the Alberni Valley, as well as continuing up the island as far as Port McNeill and Port Hardy, and then beyond up to Haida Gwaii, as well as public tenure in the north end of the island and the Sunshine Coast. All of those tenures and operations employ over 2,000 individuals. Those are small little contractors, consultants, professionals, as well as larger companies making upwards of 2 or 3 dozen employees per contractor. So a fairly significant footprint there. All of these operations and the fiber that's produced from these operations is offered locally to more than 50 mills here on the coast. Before we entertain an opportunity with international customers, all of that fiber is offered to those mills first and foremost. So regarding the local economy, as you can see from a supply chain perspective, we do have a key contribution here on the island, here on the coast. And, beyond that financial contribution, many companies and vendors are part of our business on an annual basis, on a daily basis, leading to successful operations, not only here in the valley, but throughout all of our operations here on the coast. And just to highlight a few contractors here local to the valley, Sitka Silviculture plants millions of trees for us every year and have been doing so for the last couple of decades. Newly formed partnership in Nishuk with Sechot First Nations, part of our harvesting operations here in the valley, as well as some of the longer standing contractors like Ryder, Coastal Bridge, and Mount Sicker, who have been a big part of our operations for the last couple of decades in our harvesting operations, road building, and sorting of some of our products. Just a note on our partnerships, and as we continue to evolve and strengthen these partnerships through things like MOUs and collaborative partnerships like Nishuk, doing some local harvesting. And, a big part of kind of the landscape look on things, working with the Huu-ay-aht on the HIRMP. And just a shout out to the work we've done with the Huu-ay-aht on the kiosk for the Loon Lake. If you haven't seen that in person, I encourage you to get up there and have a look at it. It is quite breathtaking and a great evidence of a collaborative work and something that we can all learn from for generations. And just a note here on a bit of a transformation for Mosaic. As we continue to evolve as a diversified land manager, we're looking for opportunities to diversify away from the core of our operations. Timberland's obviously still a big core and our primary activity across the land base, but we're looking to expand on opportunities where we can, and real estate is one of those opportunities. We do have a real estate division today, but we're looking to expand upon that as we continue to diversify our opportunities. A few things that we're looking to explore, renewable energies is one, as well natural capital. You may be familiar with our Big Coast program, which we're currently looking at how to take that project and expand it into additional opportunities, whether that's watershed services, biodiversity, or something in that regard. And just lastly, on recreation and access, you may have been aware of the survey that we put out last year, and taken an opportunity to seek feedback on how we manage recreation and access on Mosaic's lands, ultimately trying to better balance community needs with company needs as we continue to improve in that space. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Colin here.
Great, thanks, Jimmy. My name's Colin Cosman, Manager of Community Relations. Hopefully I don't fumble too much with the slide advancement here, but just take a minute to talk about sustainable forest management. So certainly a big part of that is the professionals that are involved with all our activities on our land base. So that includes foresters, biologists, geotechs, hydrologists, certainly operational specialists and environmental monitors. So a big part of managing the values on our land base. We do have Sustainable Forestry Initiative certification, so that's third-party certification, independently audited. So a big part, obviously, of our sustainability commitments. We also have a seed orchard since 1979, so that's at Mount Newton on the peninsula in Sydney. But each year we plant roughly 9 million seedlings across our land base. So obviously important for second rotation and third rotation and getting that going. And then maybe the last thing I'll mention here is science really does guide our decisions on our land base. And we also have more than 30 acts and regulations that apply to our private land. So sometimes people think that private managed forest lands only have a couple of acts or regulations that apply, but that's certainly not the case. Oh, I just clicked us right to the start here somehow. Okay. Okay, great. So specifically to watershed management, certainly protecting water quality is central to all our forest management practices, sustainability commitments, and community partnerships. As I touched on with professionals, they oversee everything that we do, including our water quality monitoring program. Science and detailed analysis leads our management practices. Lots of communications with communities and different groups around drinking water. So we have our annual purveyor meetings with different organizations through the Alberni Valley. And then lots of collaboration and communications through partnerships with Indigenous groups, local governments, and provincial governments and regional governments. Just some of the images here on this slide. So the photo on the upper left is of a field tour that we did with ACRD elected folks, directors, and staff. That's from 2025. So visited Cold Creek. This is between the Port Alberni Hump and Port Alberni itself. So this is chatting with one of our main contractors here that has a lot of staff. And then the image on the bottom right is the work that David Bolesny and myself do with the Agriculture Development Committee. So we present to them over the years and have engagement with the agriculture folks throughout Cherry Creek and Beaver Creek. The other thing I'll just touch on here is generally before we start up in any of our social areas or where we have neighbors, certainly sharing notification of activities and doing field tours and making sure folks are aware of our activities before we start up. So lots of examples of that throughout the valley. And just want to extend an offer as well to the group for anybody that is interested in a field tour. We're certainly always open to doing that. Okay, Mosaic and wildfire prevention and response. Interesting to hear the stats for the province. For 2025 for us on our private lands, last year more than 80% of fires on our land base were public caused. So pretty significant. A big part of what we do each year is, managing public access, which protects our land base and also neighboring communities. So depending on what's going on for wildfire risk, that's something that we consider. Mosaic does certainly have a partnership agreement with the BC Wildfire Service. We work closely together with those folks. The photo on the lower right is of the Mount Underwood fire, which right now is deemed to be public caused. No lightning in that area when the fire started, no industrial activities in that neighborhood. And we had our staff and consultants and crews on site within about 30 to 40 minutes. So certainly lots of focus there and lots of horsepower and communications with everybody in the Alberni Valley. So just want to highlight that. We have wildfire preparedness and response plans that we work on each year, and all our staff and contractors are trained in wildfire preparedness response. We generally have over 100 water tenders on our land base, equipment caches, a few in the Alberni Valley, along with some years having heavy lift helicopters on standby and increased security. So lots of resources and efforts there, and lots of work around prevention as well, of course. Community partnerships. So we're certainly grateful for the strong relationships we've built throughout Vancouver Island over the years. In 2024 and generally each year, we support more than 150 organizations with close to $1 million dedicated to community, environmental, and educational initiatives. So just to tie it to the Alberni Valley, there's certainly that Alberni Valley Rescue Squad, the Food Bank on the Edge, the Hupicheseth Community Food Program, Alberni District Secondary School, and a lot of other groups that we're really proud to support. Maybe the last thing in 2025 was Mosaic's Season of Giving, which happened in late December to food banks. So that was close to $60,000. And I think everybody probably recognizes the importance of the valuable work that those organizations do. And so we're certainly happy to support them. Just touch on recreation access for a minute. So Jimmy touched on this, but Mosaic does have a recreation access committee. We have a website around gate openings and information about areas that are open, certainly on the weekends and the weekdays. We have 14 not-for-profit campgrounds on our land base in the Alberni Valley. We have the Loon Lake Campground and also McTush Campground, which is very popular. But we also work with a lot of different groups. Mount Washington Alpine Resort is one that brings a lot of people to Vancouver Island. But again, tying it to the Alberni Valley, we have snowmobile agreements with different clubs, ATV agreements, hunting agreements. And then with all that, we certainly support Earth Day cleanups each year because unfortunately we see a lot of illegal dumping and illegal activity on our private land and adjacent areas. So we are supporting different groups throughout the year. The Access Refresh Initiative. So this was a public survey. We received more than 7,600 responses. We're going through that information right now. We've hired partnering third-party consultants. So 2 with extensive specialization throughout Western Canada and actually different parts of the globe for that matter. But we're continuing engagement with First Nations, recreation groups, local government, and continuing to look at how we can improve our access program and look at even signature destination opportunities and other things that really help communities and tourism. But also that includes balancing community access with wildfire risks, liability, and operational needs. So lots of different things going on there, but we're looking forward to releasing more information as things progress. So with that, just wanted to thank everyone for your time, and certainly Jimmy and I are available for questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin and Jimmy, for your great presentations. On behalf of the board, the delegation before you talked a lot about the Mount Underwood fire. And on behalf of the board, I just really want to thank Mosaic for your support and your partnership during that fire with the ACRD. You guys were there with us every step of the way. So we want to appreciate that and let the public know what great partners you are. And Daniel also asked me to recognize you for your support and partnership for the repeater tower. So again,
great.
You're great partners for the regional district, and we appreciate that.
Well, that means a lot. Thank you very much for mentioning that.
Yeah, thank you. I was on a panel discussion of forestry last fall, and I did a lot of research about how important forestry companies are to the community. And I think that's one thing that forestry does not do a very good job at, is telling people what good community partners you are. So we appreciate it when you come and you let people know.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for those good comments. Yeah, great.
Any questions from the board or comments, Director Cote?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for coming and presenting. Gives us an opportunity to thank you, actually. I just want to point out the area of development and investment that you make into this community is great, and appreciate the relationship that we have with the community, trail agreements, and so many more opportunities that we do have. And thanks for sharing your planning with the community. When you get close to some areas, you go out and door knock. I understand that. You do tours for community, and you've brought the regional district and myself and a few directors out to see active fish logging. Never did see any actual logging, I guess. Close, but it was over the hill. I have one question. So what do you have a plan? Do you have a plan for broom management? Because broom is a problem, and we've had a delegation that came in and said how flammable it is, and the hydro lines are terrible. And I'll be asking them at UBCM what their plan is, but just wanted to know what the forestry is. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. I will say we certainly are open to another field tour, and timing is everything, right? So we can certainly work towards that. But from a broom perspective, I'm going to ask Jimmy to answer that just because of his past roles with Mosaic, and it really is a monstrous can of worms, but we do have measures in place to minimize or reduce the spread of broom, and we're working with lots of different groups throughout Vancouver Island, and I will tie it to a few community groups at Sprout Lake, where each Earth Day, and I'm surprised I'll probably be seeing an email pretty soon here, but asking for support for access onto Mosaic lands, which we do always support. And AVICC, the conference this year, there was going to be a presentation about broom, and Mosaic was going to be part of that. However, that never got chosen. So anyways, I'll let Jimmy speak to that.
Thanks, Colin. I just want to reiterate the thanks for the work around the Mount Underwood fire. It was a massive opportunity for us to, showcase the collaboration, not only from the regional district for ourselves, Ministry of Transportation, and the other ministries involved. It was massively impactful and a good opportunity for us to come together for the better of the valley and all of the people within, and in the neighboring communities. So kudos to there. Regarding your question around brew management, so not so long ago, previous life, I managed all of the operations for Mosaic on a silviculture front across both our private and our public tenures. You're right, broom is a bit of a concern up and down the island. Obviously, in the South Island is a little bit of the epicenter in Sooke, where it started, and you know, over the years we continue to strategize on opportunities and how we can manage it more proactively. Yes, there are reactive treatments, whether it's herbicide or manual treatments or pulling it, you know, truly manual operations. But for us, we're trying to look at it from a more proactive approach, and education is part of that. When you do have broom on your property, being able to deal with it before it flowers, before it goes to seed. You know, a single plant can have over, you know, it can have tens of thousands of seeds on it. Once it's in the ground, it could be there for 40 years, 50 years, depending on the soil type. So having that proactive strategy is important. And for us, it's around, you think of simple things like road building. Where's your material coming from? Is there broom in your gravel pits? Are you able to manage that proactively? So when you build a road, you're not bringing that seed source out into the land base, whether that's on your own property or a neighboring property. So there's strategies like that we deploy on a regular basis. It's built right into our daily standards. So individuals building roads or our forestry crews that are out there on a daily basis afterwards are able to track it, put it into a system, and we're able to put prescriptions together to deal with it. So we're trying to attack it from a proactive approach, as well as we're reacting where priority areas are, and critical habitat is a big part of that to see it protected.
Before we go to the next question, do you mind not stop sharing your screen just so I can see who's online better? Thank you. That's awesome. Now I could see everybody. We have Director Siga, then Director Ross. So please go ahead, Director Siga.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very informative, and it's heartening to hear about a more responsible approach to forestry for certain. You did mention that you are concerned about sensitive habitats, and right now in our area we have redfish working on watershed restoration post logging, and the Clackett Biosphere Trust working on identifying wetlands before areas are logged or developed. And I'm just wondering if you're involved in supporting either of these organizations.
Those two organizations, I don't recognize. You know, Colin, if we are.
Did you ask if we're supporting them?
If you've involved them in any of your research, just because they're important to our areas. And I do appreciate that you are now including communities in considering them when you're doing your forestry, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah, like a big part of our planning perspective is to look at opportunities in and around wetlands where we can apply, you know, Colin mentioned earlier, we're leading with the latest and greatest science, whether it's around wetlands or otherwise. If there's opportunities here in the valley that we're not tapped into at the moment, we'd love to be involved. It's a big part of our, like I said, our planning process on a landscape level, as well as in individual blocks that we're planning to harvest. So it is part of the process to consider it and put a sound management plan in and around it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm from the West Coast, and so it's the Ucluelet Inlet area that I was sort of referring to. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Roth.
Thank you. At the beginning of your presentation, you talked about logs being offered for sale locally. So I'm assuming in British Columbia, and perhaps before being exported. So my questions are, why aren't these logs being purchased locally, and why are so many logs exported? We see the ships come in, load up with our natural resources and leave to other countries. So why is that happening?
Great question. You know, the whole process around log exports is fairly complicated, but To simplify it, it's there's a surplus test. Essentially, all of the logs that we do harvest, no different than other tenures, are offered locally, yes, to British Columbian mills, locally here to the valley, the island, the coast, and then into, a little bit into the interior. The surplus test comes in as part of an advertisement process. So any logs that are seen as excess can be then looked at from an international perspective, and that's where you can see logs being sold internationally. That's where you're seeing the ships loaded up, and that is only after that surplus test is satisfied. So all of the local mills have an opportunity to purchase those logs, utilize them, and only after that can they be satisfied through international markets. Anything to add, Paul?
Yeah, I'll maybe just add, we certainly sell logs to Domtar, Franklin Forest Products, and other sawyers and producers that are interested in purchase. So those are regular customers. The other thing that also gets weird is Donald Trump and all sorts of tariffs and other things happening south of the border. So that certainly impacts, where the products go and the push and pull supply and demand of lumber and other products. So, the supply chains can be quite complicated, but, we're certainly supplying a lot of logs to domestic mills, certainly right now. So, yeah.
Can you give me a percentage?
Today it's around 60%. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you.
Director Sparrow.
Thank you for that. I was interested by your comment about the gravel you take, make sure there's no seeds in them, and really from the perspective of the ACRD in the city, when we do projects in the city, I don't think we thought about seeds in the ground that could be taken to broom. We could be moving our own broom around our own valley unknowingly, so that's something like that. My question more is to do with the logging you're doing right now. I can hear from my house close to which is by the log train trail and up above where the intake is from Cherry Creek. I wonder what are you going to do for the next year? Are you planning on doing more logging up there, or is it done for the year, or what's the future look like?
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the Cold Creek area. That's the notification of activities that I shared with you a few weeks ago. We also stopped in there during our tour last year. Lots of outreach and engagement there. We restrict our hours of activities, certainly with the falling phase, so that noise is the least disruptive for neighbors in the area. Fog certainly doesn't help, but I would say for the next 6 months or so, I don't know if there's any other really active operations that are going to be coming up. I will say they will be processing there, hauling, and then probably planting this fall or early in the spring. So on average, we plant within 7 months of completing harvesting activities. So that's kind of what it looks like for the time frames in that area. So I hope that helps and answers your question. The log train trail, so there's no impacts to the log train trail. There are 2 areas we're currently active. One is kind of uphill from the log train trail. There won't be any closures on that. In the Cold Creek area, the log train trail, there's a short section that might have delays periodically for maybe a week or 2. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Director Cote.
Thank you. I forgot to say thank you for the firewood for the community. It was really well taken advantage of by the community members to get firewood pre-permits. So thank you for that. It was a lot of work, and I'm retiring, Just a question about the highway access. Is that still opening, or on Highway 4 coming into Port Alberni? You showed us the access. I believe we went in there.
In the photo in the presentation, you mean that one spot? Yes, so we're working with Ministry of Transportation and Transit. Certainly work closely with them, and we're currently looking at when activities will happen. Certainly don't want to be busy there in July and August when everybody's rushing to the West Coast and rushing home. So that's something we're considering, but we're working closely with MOTT to figure out when there's proper time and when we can use a professional plan that deals with any risk associated with that area.
Yeah, there was, I know there was tires left there, and are you seeing a lot of garbage being left at that site, or
I haven't
or other sites?
I haven't seen any garbage at that site, but we do see it at other sites. And just to tie into your comment about firewood, thank you for providing those permits to folks that are interested in firewood. And, you know, I think it helps everybody. It helps Mosaic with reducing our pile burning. So certainly for the Faber Sterling area, it's very, very minimal, generally none. And that wood, instead of being burnt in a pile, gets burnt in people's homes and generates energy. So it's a win on a whole bunch of levels. So thank you for doing that. I'm already a bit nervous for next year when you're not going to be available. So, yep.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I just want to thank you very much for taking the time to come in today and visit us. Thank you so much. And thank you for all that you do for the community as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Oh, I thought you were finished.
I was finished, but I have one more question. You did mention that you have grants available. So say the community association wanted to ask for a grant, how would that process look?
Thank you for bringing that up, Director Cote. So on the Mosaic website, it's pretty simple. Click on sponsorship and donations. There's a form there. It's a very easy form to fill out. Both Jimmy and I sit on the sponsorship and donations committee. We meet generally quarterly or every 3 months or something like that. And so the committee reviews and decides what groups are eligible or not. So we always appreciate that being shared in the community so that folks that need resources are receiving it. So thanks so much for bringing that up.
Thank you. Good information for everyone. Thank you again. Next, we have correspondence for information. We have a request from the Regional District involvement from Pacific Rim School District for the replacement of Alberni District Secondary School turf field. We have news from the Island Coastal Economic Trust. We have a letter from Shari Stevens related to the proposed name changes requested by the Tokloket First Nations. And today we received a notice of closure, of highway closure. And I'd just like to read that before we move on. I'd like to provide you with advance notice that the Ministry of Transportation is planning a full closure of Highway 4 between Chalet Road and the Hump on February 25th between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. The scheduled closure will be utilized to demobilize the project area near Angel Rock adjacent to the lake, realign the rockfall mitigation fencing and barrier that was removed for the lane, as well as clear debris behind the barrier as needed to reinstate catchment behind the fencing. The work must be completed during the day to the rockfall hazard that exists through the Cameron Lake area of Highway 4 to ensure that the workers have a clear view of the overhead hazards to abide by necessary operating procedures. Similarly to the mobilization closure of the area that occurred in December, we will have a procedure in place to accommodate emergency access through the work site for the duration of the closure. Separate notification to HEMBC and EHS and the local fire departments to ensure they are aware and to answer any questions that they may have. Main Road Mid-Island will be sending a separate stakeholder notification about this work, and additional reminders will be released closer to the closure date as well, and Drive BC will be updated accordingly. Does anyone want to pull anything out? Director Roth. Director Boyko?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So regarding the Pacific Rim School District replacement of the turf field, so this is the third provincial item to the board asking for funding from the ACRD in the last 2-3 meetings here. So first we talked about spending money on lobbyists for the roads. Then we looked at $100,000 for a potential hospital clinic here. And now we're looking at taking on a new service for a school district owned by the province asset. So I have some very pointed questions here. Now, this school was built in 2012, so you got 12 years of life on this. So initially, how was the life of this asset predicted? Does the school district have an asset management plan and put money aside for replacement of this thing? Now, in the recent couple of years, the SD70 has built 2 new playgrounds for about $500,000 in this town, one at Alberni Elementary, one at Sumas. Now, obviously that money is coming from somewhere. Can we put a pause on new playgrounds in order to do this turf field and let some prioritization happening? And there are rumors of future restriction of groups to not be able to use this field if you're not a school district party, however you want to say that. So currently it's being used very often for soccer fields and things like this. So if the plan is to restrict use to extend life of this turf, I would say there's not a lot of public support to have this supported and funded by the ACRD if it's not going to be available to the broader audience. Thank you.
I was going to suggest they've asked to meet for an opportunity to meet with regional district representatives. So I was going to suggest that we actually invite them to a meeting. So what I would suggest, Director Boyko, if you could just hang on to those questions, and when they come as a delegation, you can certainly ask those questions.
I would definitely
we don't
ask
have the
those-
answers.
I would definitely ask those questions, and they can come bring those answers, and we'll have sure there are a lot more questions will come out. Thank you.
So can I ask that somebody from the RCD send a letter and invite them to come as a delegation? Do you need a motion for that? Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we invite the Pacific Rim School District to come and meet with regional district representatives to discuss the service area considerations, potential partnership models, and how this project may align with regional district priorities regarding the turf field located at the senior secondary school.
I'll second.
Seconded by Director Boyko. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And Director Roth, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that same letter. A number of points here. According to a January 9th, 2026 Nanaimo News report, School District 70 has a $1 million deficit and is cutting CUPE jobs, reassigning teachers, and reducing travel and meeting expenses to cope with the shortfall. Their superintendent called it a significant deficit. When an organization is already struggling financially, it's not appropriate for the ACRD to cover its capital projects. 2, taxpayers already fund the school district. Residents already pay school taxes to fund district operations and capital needs. Asking ACRD taxpayers to also pay through regional taxes would mean double paying for a school facility. 3, the ACRD was not involved in the decision. The ACRD was not consulted in the design, planning, budgeting, or approval of the turf field replacement. The community was also not consulted. Because of this, there's no public mandate to use regional tax dollars for this purpose. 4, the turf field is not a regional asset. Although the field is heavily used, it is still school property owned, operated, and controlled by School District 70. For something to become a regional service, several legal steps must be taken. None of these have occurred. The ACRD must focus on essential services. Our region is already facing financial pressure from emergency services, waste management, water systems, local infrastructure, and inflation. Taking on a school's capital project would divert funds away from these core responsibilities. The school district already has a backup plan. School District 70 has stated that if they cannot raise enough money for turf, they will replace the surface with natural grass. This means the community will still have a field even without regional funding. So all in all, I think it's not fair, responsible, or financially sound for the ACRD to use regional tax dollars to pay for a school-owned asset, especially when the school district is currently in a deficit and the public had no say in the project. Thank you.
Okay. Can I get a motion that the Board of Directors receive items A through D for information? Director Cote?
A motion, but I wanted to speak to.
Please go ahead.
like to speak to item C, Sherry Stevens, related to proposed name changes request by Toloquiet First Nations. My question just is to staff. Did we reply to this letter?
So we did respond to this letter. As you may recall, this was noted at the Board of Directors meeting where the resolution was made to provide the support regarding the name changes. The board made a resolution that because this was a lengthy question or correspondence, that it be presented under correspondence for information at the next board meeting. And we responded to the individual in that regard to let them know that it would be presented then.
When we get letters like this, could we actually see a letter of response coming from the board as well? I just wanted to make sure that we had responded. Thank you.
Okay, so Director Cote made a motion to accept the items for information. Could I get a seconder? Moved by Director Cote, second by Director Sparrow. Director Boyko, do you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So what Director Cote just said, to respond to this letter, are we waiting? Are we getting something from the First Nation coming to us at the next board meeting? Is that what I heard?
No, that's not what you heard. We responded to the letter, and the request was that in the future, when we do these responses, if that could also be part of the package, so you can see the response.
Okay,
We're not expecting any answer from Toloquiet.
I remember that when this came up a few board meetings ago, that we were asking for additional information from the First Nation, such as why are we changing these names? Are the names offensive? Why are we doing it now? We had about 5 questions that we're looking to ask, and are we waiting? Are we getting a response on that or not at this time?
Daniel, please go ahead.
That was part of the report, and that was made part of the decision the board made last time. So those responses were provided, and the board proceeded with the motion to move forward.
Perfect, thank you.
Director Mastangelo.
I just wanted to be clear. I think the confusion was on the word of support, is that we weren't looking to like move this as a support. They were just bringing it to us for comments. So maybe removing the word support would help.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next is request for decisions and bylaws. Today we have Chief Mike Kobus here. He was the fire chief for Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department, and he was going to come and talk about the feasibility study. Welcome, nice to see you.
Thank you. So I'm going to move this laptop here. Good afternoon, Chair, Board. Thank you for having me to go over on this presentation for today. So the purpose of today, as you have, I think it's on page 40 and 41 of your package, is to seek the board approval to award the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department Fire Hall feasibility study to Waymark Architecture. Just to go over some of that stuff there, it's just, you know, when we talked about it a few years ago, is the envisionment of why are we doing this, and looking for, because of the health risk and contaminations in space and et cetera, as it built up, and looking at some other different options, we chose to do a feasibility study to say, is it feasible to build an addition versus building a new hall, and then in a location, if that was the case, to be further down there. So that is why we wanted to do it. The desired outcome of what we wanted for the study was to give the board more information, give us as a department more information of which path to choose, whether it's viable to do an addition versus a new hall, in the whole expenditures and your lifespan of your building, and what has to be upgraded inside the building itself. With the whole procurement, the process, what we did is a process that the regional district has. We had a committee that we put together that did the scoring, and ultimately the scoring became with Waymark at the end of that. So it meets and everything that we chatted about. But in closing, out of that there is just, you know, hopefully that there's information. I'm open to any questions, and thank you for the opportunity to present this.
Thank you, Chief Kobus. Is there any questions from the board? Director Boyko.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Chief. One question I have is regarding the previous seismic work that has been deemed questionable. Is that going to be on the agenda for them to examine if it's still viably acceptable, that the seismic upgrades are still good, or we have to redo them? And is that going to be part of the project that they're examining? Thank you.
Through the chair, yes, Director Boyko, great question. Those are things that we're hoping, if when we get to a discovery with them, is having that option and seeing what changes in the code are there, and is it still viable? Correct.
Thank you.
Director Roth.
Thank you. I'd also like to request that the final feasibility report include 3 clear options like renovation, rebuild on site, and new site alternatives with the Class D cost ranges, operating life cycle costs, and a funding strategy if you can. And I'd also like to make a motion.
Through the chair, yeah.
Please go ahead.
Great way. I mean, that's obviously some of the stuff that we've got. It's laid out kind of already in the package that we've had received from all the applicants that we've had. But that is definitely something that we can speak to them too about. So.
Okay. So I would like to move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors award the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department feasibility study contract to Waymark Architecture in the amount of $79,430 excluding GST.
Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Cote. Any final questions or comments? Director Sparrow.
Thank you for that. So you're going to look at other fixing up a building you have or looking for a new area. That is correct, right? So
The intention is that correct?
yeah. So my question is, like, you have an AMA agreement or an AA agreement now because you each of those fires all the time now, right? So are they going to look at that agreement and see if how far you can push the fire hall out down Beaver Creek? Because an AMA agreement, I think the fire underwriter says you have to be within 5 miles of a responding fire department, not your responding fire department. So with that in mind, you can say the Port Alberni Fire Department can respond within 5 miles of their fire hall, and that means your fire hall can move further out into the Beaufort area, and you have a better chance of capturing more people out there that want fire service in the future. Is that going to be part of the study?
With some information there as of right now, staff.
Sure. I think the wording is responding partner as opposed to your responding partner. So if that is the case, you can capture a lot more people. The potential, if they choose to do so, by moving your fire hall further away. So, I have one more weird question. Yeah, I know. We used to do annual reports for the fire department, and I haven't seen one in about 3 or 4 years. Do you still do them?
Through the chair. I was already anticipating this for tomorrow, but we do. As of our director is retired, it has been put on us, and I'm working through that as we speak. So hopefully in the next little bit we have that opportunity. So right now I've been focusing on the budget stuff, but that is in our books.
Okay. The reason I asked that because the last one I saw on our website is from 2020. So
thank you. Director Roth, can you turn off yours?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much for coming in.
Great. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Next, we have a request for decision, solid waste recycling and reduction education, outreach and engagement consultant. Tanya, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. The item for consideration is to award the solid waste recycling and reduction education, outreach and engagement consultant contract to Let's Talk Trash in the amount of $87,800 per year on a 1-year term, with the option to renew for 2 additional years. In late 2025, ACRD issued a request for proposals for education services from consultants who have experience developing and implementing effective community education, outreach and engagement programs, and supporting materials related to waste diversion and management. ACRD received 5 responses to the RFP. The 5 proposals were evaluated based on background experience, qualifications, project understanding, approach, schedule, references, price, and social procurement. Let's Talk Trash scored the highest across all of the evaluation criteria, excluding price, and is the recommended consultant for this contract. Thank you. I'm happy to answer questions.
Director Cote and then Director Boyko.
Thank you. We used to have meetings at the regional district regarding the landfill and what the program was and how we were moving forward. And then we included recycling and now food waste and composting, and it's grown quite extensionally. And I'm wondering, I don't remember exactly, we knew we needed an education program, but we're looking at a possibly 3-year term for an education program. I need more information on what this is actually going to cover, because what are our staff that are working here doing that if they're not doing this and just having like a slight education, you know, here's the material and this is what you're going to do, put out. So I'm just wondering why we are looking at a 3-year contract here. Thank you.
Please go ahead, Tanya.
Yeah. So the contract is the $87K covers the first year of the contract with the option for 2 additional renewals, just to clarify. The contract covers services that go beyond what we could do in-house at this point. We do have regular engagement with our comms team to push out social media posts and to utilize the materials that are created through this contract. But the work that this consultant will be doing is quite extensive, and I can tell you what the deliverables on this contract are, so you can get an idea as to the extent of what is offered through the contract. So the key contract deliverables are development of a strategic framework and strategy. That's about 30 hours, 60 hours on social media post development with language integration, some of it for First Nations, 200 hours for development and implementation of a community and awareness campaigns, including 10 radio spots on Tough City Radio on the West Coast, 4 Albany Valley public service announcements, coordination of guest speakers, design content for media toolkits, and dissemination of the toolkits throughout the community. 140 hours to develop and implement a door-to-door engagement program for areas in the Albany Valley that are bear and or contamination hotspots. And that program will include door hangers, stickers, printing, door knocking, and this cost includes all of that. About 200 hours for boots on the ground community engagement at a minimum of 11 booth events, often on weekends and after hours. Classroom presentation, school waste audits, etc. And currently they're proposing 3 events on the West Coast, 4 in Albany Valley, plus 4 days at the Regional Fall Fair. 30 hours on attendance at Teacher Pro Day in District 70 to reach teachers, discuss curriculum, school waste audits, etc. 150 hours for continued development of the Community Champions program. Let's Talk Trash over the last 2 years have developed this program where they are engaging with people in the community to help to spread the word about solid waste and how to manage solid waste. They promote, communicate, and implement our initiatives. And through that program, 36 classroom presentations occurred last year in 2025. And then there's 40 hours reserved for miscellaneous opportunities and engagement. A lot of times opportunities will come up that you weren't expecting, so it leaves some hours for engaging in those. And if that's not completed, if those hours aren't needed, then we won't use them. So that's kind of the framework of what this consultant is proposing. It's really a whole FTE. In-house, we're working on things like airspace analyses and working with the First Nations on the land tenure at AB, coordinating with different partnerships throughout the region, bears on the West Coast, And actually at the board meeting tomorrow, we'll be going over the whole work plan for 2026, and you'll hear all about the things that we're proposing.
Please go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to that conversation because I'm hearing things that you're saying right now that are things that you've already done at schools that aren't part of this contract. And also, you're talking about door knocking. So, I don't see like how much of this is for the city of Port Alberni and how much is this for the rural areas? So, trying to get a grasp on how this is going to affect my community as I pull that out. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that for the door knocking, there will be spaces in the rural areas where they will go to because they are a hotspot for contamination or noted bear problems. They'll also be coordinating with the gleaning program, which also has borders that go between the electoral areas and the city limits. But one of the key things about this is that these services, this education and outreach, it's important to also reach the city folks because their waste is going to our ACRD managed landfill. And siting a new landfill is very, very expensive. Cowichan Valley is actually barging all of their waste to the US because they couldn't find a proper space to put a new landfill once they ran out of space. So we really want to preserve our landfill space as long as possible. And so education and outreach is important for the whole community because it helps to divert waste from being landfilled and it extends our landfill life.
Thank you, Director Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. I have some similar concerns to what Director Cote has. So we have 3 full-time people doing ACRD landfill stuff. We have a solid waste manager, a solid waste coordinator, and a solid waste project coordinator. So we have contracts at both facilities. So what we're saying is those 3 people do not have enough time to do anything else besides their current jobs. Is that what we're saying?
This goes beyond their current scope of work. Yes, the work plans that we put together accounts for a ton of tasks and hours, and this work is not included in those FTE positions.
Okay, so the work is not included. Can we change their scope so that it is included, or is that not the hours that we have allocated for the staff? I know what you're going to say, but the answer is, here's my question.
Yeah.
So you got new funding for this position that didn't exist last year that we're going to have this year, right? Is that the plan?
A new funding for which position? This contract existed for the last 2 years. We're just renewing a new contract. We wanted to go competitive because we wanted to add some new key pieces to their scope of work.
So we've already done this for 2 years and we're looking to do another year and potentially 2 more years on top of that. So a total of 5 years.
Yes.
And 5 years.
I'd just like to, Daniel would like to mention something here, so I'm just going to interrupt you both for a moment.
Sorry to jump in, but this isn't new funding and this isn't a new contract. The process that we're following is under the new procurement policy to make sure that we're following it. But at a staff level, we've never been designing the communications and outreach in their entirety. We've complemented and helped where we can, where we had surplus hours, but it hasn't been the core of what our existing staff have been doing. And the reason why we've stayed with contract and not coming back to the board with alternatives is that it's been more cost effective to continue with the contract, and the board has overtly expressed that they don't want us just adding more staff because of the momentum that creates. So the maintenance of existing contracts in this case is maintaining status quo. And the process that we followed is per the process where our procurement policies identify this process. The review is done per the process, and per those tendered contracts, we're looking at the identification of best value for the cost.
So best value for the cost. So we've done 2 years of public engagement and sessions, and I've been to some of them. We're looking for 1 more year and potentially 2 more years. Are we actually need 5 years to tell people how to sort their trash? Is that what we're planning on?
So having an education and outreach program is required under our solid waste management plan. which is required under the regulations. So yes, solid waste education is an ongoing effort. There is never enough education and outreach that we can do to reach all of the people who are utilizing the service. It's important to make sure that people understand landfill literacy and how our landfills run out of space, what it means for that to happen to the community, why it's important to divert and use the diversion programs. If we get rid of education and outreach, then we're losing momentum in the community that is needed to keep the programs going and successful.
Perfect. Two more questions. Are we going to spend any time talking to commercial, industrial, multi-level residential units that contribute well over 50% of the waste to our landfill, rather than knocking on people's houses and actually target the major contributors?
Yeah, under this contract, we're really focused on the residential and continuing to keep that value and understanding alive in the community and successful. However, the commercial and MFD generators, our intent is to address a plan for that in our solid waste management plan, the next version. And in the meantime, we're just doing our best to address diversion through interim actions. So for example, in 2025, we raised the ICI tipping fees on the West Coast. In 2025, we established approvals to move forward with the ICI landfill diversion program to help businesses with costs associated with, especially initial costs with participating in diversion. We implemented the self-haul organics pilot program, which gives MFDs the opportunity to participate in organics diversion. And also we've been leaning a lot into partnership opportunities, so actively engaging with Synergy Foundation's work on green building and manufacturing and deconstruction and circular hubs, and also exploring opportunities to implement organics programs for commercial composting in both of the service areas. So we're working on it interim while we try to wrap our brains around a good plan forward for commercial ICI. And I agree that's something that we definitely want to pay attention to and address.
Perfect. My thoughts is this is nice, but we've already done it. And you've got a lot of pushback in the regional areas about the mandatory 3-stream separation. And if that comes back, you're going to have a lot more, because the public is realizing we're spending money on something they do not want to do for a third time. That being said, I would like this project, if we're going to pay for this, to focus on the larger things, not the smaller things moving forward. So I don't know if we need a motion to change that. Maybe we can't change it this year, but if we're going to keep going, focus on that moving forward, rather than continue to potentially upset the regional district areas for a third time. Thank you.
Dr. McEwen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Tanya, I'd love to see a copy of what you were reading out as far as what this position's duties entail, because that wasn't part of this report. So I'd love to see a list of that. Second of all, we've done on the West Coast education and outreach until the cows come home over the last few years with WildSafe, and it's not working. So last night at our council meeting, we approved a wildlife attractant bylaw, which gives our bylaw officer some clout to actually fine people, and we're looking at a 5-year contract for a wildlife safety response officer. And so I would personally like to see Ucluelet's portion of this $88,000 go toward helping us pay for that wildlife safety response officer. We killed 13 bears last year, and that is just not acceptable. And I do not want to see this happen ever again. The culprit has been identified as the 3-bin system that the ACRD implemented several years ago. The bears, people are not anchoring them properly. Bears are taking them off into the woods, figuring out their weak points, how to open them up. And they seem to be passing that information on to each other, because the bears on the West Coast now know how to open those carabiners. They know where the weak spots are. And so the Education and outreach, while it would be good to be ongoing, it's not working here. So I would, and we can take this to the West Coast Committee if that's appropriate, but I would really prefer to see Ucluelet's portion of this money go to help us with the with this new person in Ucluelet specifically, to avoid killing 13 bears ever again.
Yeah, I understand. One item to consider is that this contract is supporting the 5 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle, that were required under our solid waste management to plan to address. The solid waste management plan, the current one, which is a bit outdated, it also requires us to engage with, do education, promotion, and outreach in congruence with recycling programs. So there's certain items that this education and outreach is fulfilling that if we took the money and put it to bears, it just would not fulfill what's required regulatorily. But that being said, ACRD is contributing a $19K towards the WildSafe contract. So I think that, and they're doing a lot of really good work, and they're very available to residents in a sort of a positive, proactive way that might complement more enforcement. So there is money being put towards that, and hopefully your new position or your new effort with the enforcement can coordinate with the WildSafe folks to come up with something that is 2-tiered and works even better than WildSafe is able to accomplish on their own. And then my second thought on the bears is just that ACRD continues to do our best to work with the stakeholders over on the West Coast on the bear issue. We do consider a priority. We're working with the 13 folks right now to try to figure out a solution for that property. We've put many, many hours into it. So I'm not sure that the solution is to divert money from this contract, since we need these things regulatorily, but certainly we're prioritizing that effort.
Thank you, Director Steer.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the conversation here today around this particular topic. And I do want to stress that I certainly hear Director McEwen and Director Boyko's concerns, and they are valid concerns, especially considering the incidents, as Director McEwen has pointed out, on the West Coast and specifically in the community of Ucluelet. It is unacceptable, and I agree with her. In terms of Dr. Boyko's points around the fiscal responsibility and how do we control costs to the taxpayer, it's a valid point. But I do want to then stress the value in the education program. It is a legislative requirement that enables us to build on the work that has been gone on previously. It's also been presented to the board on a number of occasions, and certainly through the Solid Waste Management Advisory, it was a key factor in the success of the implementation of the work that we're doing, certainly around the Solid Waste Management Plan. So I do want to stress that it is important. I also want to recognize the points that both directors have brought forward. And to that effect, I think the work that the ACRD staff have been doing in this area is exemplary. That being said, I do think there is an opportunity within this contract to have the legislative requirements come in-house over time, and this is the 3rd year of the contract, if I'm not incorrect, and that part of that education process is to help our staff maybe continue with the programs and in essence be able to lower those costs into the future moving forward. And that's certainly a concern of many of the, as I can hear from many of the directors in the room here. So I take that seriously and look at ways that we might be able to mitigate that contract cost moving into the future. For now, though, I think it is a very valuable addition, and I will be supporting the motion, the recommendation as presented.
Thank you, Director Siga.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we did have a presentation by Trash Talk, and it was clear that it was the educational component, particularly involving the younger people, was an important piece of people taking accountability for the garbage that they are creating. So I don't think that we can not do this piece of work, and definitely educational work is quite different than management and problem solving. So 2 points. There's 40 hours that can be used towards other pieces of work that have been designated. And I also have a concern about the commercial garbage. We have on the West Coast businesses that have gone out of their way to create compostable materials for their food, and yet it's being collected and dumped into the dump. So what I would consider is those 40 hours being used to reach out to commercial operators with perhaps a survey in finding out the most effective way to collect this. And I have a sneaking hunch that rather than it being bins that are susceptible to bears, that we take a note from the large parks that have done research for years and have large bins that cannot be dragged off. And we have one for compost, we have one for recyclables, and we have one for the garbage in these commercial areas. And I think we would have good uptake. And the reason I'm so concerned about the bylaw piece of this is that we do have, and I have had my garbage out in the morning, the truck has not come and a bear has come by. Well, I'm sorry, I'm chasing the bear down the road and the bin is not locked because I'm waiting for pickup. And this happens to anybody who has a shift that starts at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, their garbage is susceptible. And so there has to be an alternative. And I think people will be responsible if you offer them that alternative, if you have secured bins for the garbage that are accessible within the communities. So I hate to backstep so much, but I think this is really important. And the 13 Bear Kills says it's important. But yeah, so I am in support of this education piece. I think it's critical for our future kids. And I'll be voting in the affirmative for this. But I'm wondering if these 40 hours can't be used to direct some of these other pieces that we have concerns about. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. I support what Director Siga just said about the 40 hours being directed to ICI, the large people that create the majority of the waste. Secondly, one of the main concerns from the regional area is, Sprout Lake, Beaver Creek, Cherry Creek, Beaufort with the 3-stream was the bear issue. And it's interesting what Director McCune has said with a couple of years of experience that is the main reason that the bears have been killed. And no one wants to kill bears out here or attract them to their yard for destruction of your chickens and everything else that's actually happening out here as well. So it's good to see. It's not good to see. How about that? It's not good to see that the 3-stream collection has directly contributed to bear destruction, and the concern has been validated through the worst possible way. Thank you.
Director Cote.
Thank you. It seems like we're having a real conversation here, and there's a lot of unknown areas about what's going on with solid waste. We used to have a solid waste committee, was all of the board, where we could ask all the questions and we knew what the plan was. And since we're going into budget right now, it seems like we should have had that conversation prior to this meeting with a ask when there's so many questions going forward. So I'd really like to see the solid waste committee reinstated where the board could have an update on all aspects of what's going on. And maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I feel like I'd like more information. Thanks, Daniel.
Just following up on that, I mean, we do have a committee that's been obviously focused on a number of different issues, and I will just state that they have reported back on a regular basis, and we do provide annual reports as well. And I think of all the services we do provide, solid waste is actually one of the areas where we do have a lot of deliberation. I think there are some pretty sweeping claims made when we say that 3-stream is responsible for the downing of 13 bears. I would disagree. I think at the end of the day, we're talking about storage and how we store and collect our waste. Bears would get into garbage if that's where the compost was buried into it. And at the end of the day, it's about collection. Where do we store it, and how is it collected, and then where is it stored again? The three-stream process is not responsible for the killing of 13 bears. It's how we manage and collect that. Now, the discussion around the management and collection of that has to bear in mind, of course, the ease of the user. We all want convenience in our homes. We have to think of the environment we're in, and as Tanya was appropriately identifying, we have to also manage the long-term costs. We can't continue burying things and then hoping that we're going to control for methane or deal with other issues over time. We have to be thinking of the entire process, the entire footprint, and the generations that are impacted. And even though, like, when we look at our landfill areas and we say, okay, we have 60 to 90 years left, that is not a long time when we think of the life of our communities. And when we think of our relationship with First Nations as well, it's remembering that like, these were put in place without consultation in a lot of cases, and building new ones with consultation has a tremendous impact on all communities. So we can't just assume that we're going to build new landfills. So like it is a problem deserving of a lot of discussion and a lot of education. Now, how we do that education, we can certainly revisit a year from now. We have been doing it per legislation. We have been doing it per contract, outside of what our staff regularly do, and we can change that format. I wouldn't want to change it for the sake of just changing it now. I think we should have a much larger discussion, perhaps around strategic planning, but it is also something that I would put through to our standing committee to deliberate on. What is the next, or what should the next 3 to 5 years look like in terms of communication outreach to have the best bang for the buck, and then come back with options to talk about. We were not prepared to have option discussions today because all this is the implementation of a procurement process. And we can, like I said, we can come back with larger discussions. I just don't think that today is necessarily the day. And so I just want to follow up on that because it feels like we're spiraling in a number of directions that aren't necessarily pertinent to the task at hand today.
Thank you for that, Daniel. Director Steer?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, Daniel just summarized what I was going to touch on, so I won't reiterate. But what I will do is I'd like to make the motion that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors award the solid waste recycling and reduction education outreach and engagement consult contract to Let's Talk Trash in the amount of $87,800, excluding GST, per year on a 1-year term with an option of renewing for an additional 1-year terms.
Moved by Director Steer, seconded by Director Siga. And I'll go to Director Sparrow.
Thank you for that. I used to do the composting thing too, but I got too many bears walking around my yard, so we got rid of the composting because that does attract a lot of bears. But I'm going to reiterate what Director Boyko said about the ICI. They are one of the biggest contributors to it. I don't know how this soft trash is going to actually engage with those people and their organizations in order to try and move that down. Yes, we have a problem we have to do with organics. I understand that. And we do have moving towards recycling, we should do that. But we also have to look at the biggest contributor is the one we're not really engaging hard with. And I know Nanaimo started engaging with them, and they do have a separate area there up on the hill to help construction waste and other waste too. So they've taken it upon themselves. We have to do the same thing and try to find a way of reducing our biggest contributor, which is not the public, but we have to also reduce the public too. But we haven't really engaged the biggest contributor to that landfill that I think of. Thank you.
There's been a lot of conversations about the biggest contributors of commercial businesses. They don't make the garbage. We make the garbage for the commercial businesses. So it's not the restaurant making the garbage, it's us going to the restaurant that makes the garbage. It's not a developer making the garbage, it's when they come into our home and do the renovations of the building, then makes the garbage. So it is actually the public as well. Director Boyko and then Director Steer, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And you're correct. It's the people asking for services that create the garbage. The people that shop at Canadian Tire and buy something and then have to throw away a box or something like that. I hope you're not suggesting that we stop all commercial commerce in this town to save garbage, though, because I don't think people would be happy with that. But if this passes, I would encourage the ACRD, CAO, and the 4 people at the solid waste facilities to redesign this moving forward for next year to do what's minimally required by the legislative for outreach. Is that a website and an email? Is that sufficient? And focus on what we do with the larger contributors. Okay, where does their stuff go? How do we collect it? How do we minimize it? How do we force them to do 3-stream at the majority of the facilities that are in the city of Port Alberni? That's the major problem. We need to focus on that, or else you're going to lose rapid support for to carry this on for another couple of years. Thank you.
Dr. Steer, did you have your hand up?
I did, thank you. And I just, I don't want to belabor, this has been an important conversation, but I will go back to what our CAO was referring to in terms of the matter at hand. But I do want to point out the extensive work of the Solid Waste Management Advisory, which I chair, and the many community volunteers that have put in extensive hours into this. So this has not been neglected from a community standpoint, and they have reported back to this board on a number of occasions through our staff. That being said, I want to thank the work that's been done by the board here in recognizing the importance of this, and it's engaged in this lively conversation.
Okay, so the motion has been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next is planning matters. RE 25004 Gibson 5670 Granview Road and Beaver Creek for rezoning. Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a rezoning application for a property located at 5670 Grandview Road. The property owners have applied to rezone it to acreage residential RA3 district, which would intend to facilitate a 3-lot subdivision with a 0.24 hectare minimum lot size, and that's outlined in the attached subdivision plan in your package. The bylaw received 3 readings at the last meeting on January 28th. Following the completion of the public input process, there was no correspondence that was received from the public in this case. And the agency referral responses that have been received recommended support for the application. At this time, the applicants appear to have satisfied the conditions of rezoning, and staff recommend that the board proceed with adoption of bylaw P1532. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to read the motion, Director Roth?
Sure. I move that bylaw P1532 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Atlas Amendment bylaw be adopted.
Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Sparrow. Director Siga, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. I just need to ask, it looks like one of the lots is going to have most of the creek. And I'm just wondering if that would actually be a functional lot then. It just kind of concerned about the waterway.
Yes, certainly. Through the chair, thank you for the question. The west half or the back half of the lot does have a creek and a bit of a ravine, but there is a building envelope that has been identified closer to Grandview Road, so plenty of room on that site, and that site would be about 1.3 hectares or about 3.4 acres, so a good sized property to accommodate future development, and then it would be a 0.24 hectare vacant lot, and then another smaller lot with the existing improvements located on it already. Thank you.
Director Boyko, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm going to answer my own question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next is staff reports. Service establishment for grant and aid funding. Cynthia, please go ahead.
Yes, so this report is to provide the board with information regarding the process for establishing a service for annual grant and aid funding. As you may recall, at the January 28th meeting, the Board of Directors resolution was carried directing staff to investigate the development of a service to support vulnerable persons in the region. And this was following the presentation from Port Alberni Victim Services. Currently, Victim Services has been awarded $26,000 since 2015 in the grant and aid process to establish a service for the grant and aid funding. A regional district must adopt a service establishment bylaw. The procedures are outlined on what that work would entail. Grant and aid service establishment is done to provide the nonprofit certainty for funding allocations from the ACRD without having to go through the annual grant and aid application process every year. And it is estimated that approximately 80 hours of staff time would be required for each grant and aid service establishment to engage with the organization, develop the service establishment bylaw, and conduct the participating area approval process. And currently we have identified Cherry Creek Community Hall to move forward in 2026. And as well as there is the list of other grant and aid recipients that have been identified by the board that they would like to explore this option, and then also a link to the full list of 2025 grant and aid recipients. And then it's also important to note that the financial impacts of this service or of each service would be discussed during the establishment of the bylaw, and that additional costs would be required to conduct the participating area approval for each service.
Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Cynthia and Chair. So just a note, when you go to the link to click on the thing, the link does not work. The link is magically hidden a line above and invisible to actually look at the detailed things if you want to look at it. But once you figure that out and you go in there, it doesn't break it down by electoral area who's paying for what. So for example, the Beaufort group does not contribute to economic development, but the other ones do. So we need to break it down by electoral area to be more user-friendly after the link is fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Director Steer?
Yes, thank you through the chair. I think there was semi-answered by Director Boyko. There was I was having some difficulties understanding how and Cynthia alluded to it, but who are the participating contributors for this service? And I think I understood it, but maybe Cynthia, maybe a bit more clarification on that, just so I understand how that process works. I think I do, but maybe I don't.
I will jump in. So that would be part of the discussion with the board when we were determining what these would look like. So if we were doing them one at a time, then maybe redfish restorations only the West Coast. If the board opts to try to put them all into one service, then we could develop an apportionment formula that would hopefully stand the test of time. But yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion to be had to determine what these would look like moving forward. And then once an apportionment method and participants are established, that would go into the establishing bylaw and be set moving forward.
So just to build on that, I was just pulling up the detailed spreadsheet for the 2025 grant and aids, and currently Victim Services is Alberni Valley and Bamfield.
Thank you. Yeah, that was part of it. And thank you. So for the remainder of those potential grant and aid recipients, it would be a wait and see until we have a more fulsome discussion about how that might transpire.
I think that is the plan. Thank you. Any other questions, Director Sparrow?
Thank you. So we had a report done to the HRD that we were the third least. Whatever. We're bad. Okay, sure, we'll go with that. And as we go through this grant and aid to put them into service areas, we should be more effective of what we do for cost effectiveness and put us in a better standing. So I assume we're going to start moving through this through a lot of these grant and aids over the years to come as we become more financially respectable, I guess we'll call it. Is that the intent?
Terry?
I believe the statistics that they used for that report were general government only, and these do not go through general government. So these right now are funded as separate services under the legislation where we're allowed to requisition for them. But they are year on year. They have to apply every year. They're not set up for multi-year commitments. So it would not change our standing in that report. Changing our standing in that report would likely be establishing services for things like secondary road access that we're doing as a feasibility, primary care retention and recruitment, drag racers, Island Corridor Foundation, like all those like proposed services that we're contemplating. Those are living in general government right now, but our grant and aid program itself is not coming through unless they grouped that in what they like. We had a discussion with them about what CFIB, is that their acronym, used, and they said they used general government, but I don't know if they grouped other things into that or not. So, but I don't believe they did. I think they purely looked at our general government. To improve those statistics, we need to start charging overhead out for things like HR, IT, finance, so that the services that are like those overhead services are getting charged out to Beaver Creek Water, Sprout Lake Fire, and a more equitable level, which we are going to start this year with looking at IT services. That's just I would say, a function of growth, that the exercise before wasn't worth it due to our size. And now we're kind of tipping that scale of needing to make those extra administrative adjustments.
Director Roth. I'm wondering if we can, at the same time, look at removing the bylaw for McLean Mill. And I'm also wondering if perhaps that's why it was put into a bylaw rather than a grant name. I just don't know the history of it.
The history, Terry? I'm the history keeper here now. Well, Alex is probably in that category. I actually don't know the history of that either. And last time I looked, there wasn't a lot of easy documentation for us to find, but we could definitely dig into what the history is. And then I think the city was doing some plans. We were waiting for them to have their discussions at a council level. And then I think once they had kind of made a bit of a path forward, we were going to ask them to come as a delegation to talk about kind of where they were headed with the McLean's Mill for us to talk about that service.
Oh, go ahead, Daniel.
I'll just add to all of this that the development of services, even though it takes time, it would really be good for us to have a strategy. Every year, I think we should be looking at things that ought to be a service rather than just pooled. Over time, regardless of CFIB, it will allow for better comparison on efficiencies on around where our dollars are going and how they're spent. Because being able to direct who's part of what and how under a service is way more efficient than one big pool. And so what we wanted to identify here is certainly the time that it takes to develop a service. And if we are choosing some, let's pick and choose the ones that we think produce the best value over time. But I think annually, like you'll see tomorrow when we do start discussing that first iteration of the budget, that there are other opportunities in other areas for us to develop services, and we won't be able to do them all in 2026, and nor would we be able to do them all in 26 and 27. So over time, having a strategy on every year, which ones we're tackling and why, would really be important, and having some good discussion around what it means if we go through the process of developing a service and the public says no. So let's say, because like looking at the victim services discussion, we've been in some way, shape, or form we've been providing funds since 2009. If we were to switch and say in 2026, we're going to look at developing a service, we want the highest standards, so we're going to go referendum instead of AAP. If we went down that path and the public said no, does that mean that we also stop giving them a grant and aid? And so, but it's a really important discussion to have, because from my perspective, I'd be looking at something like this saying, look, we've been providing funding for almost 20 years and the public hasn't pushed back to say, hey, this is a terrible idea. I would be confident with an AAP for a service like this. Now, just because I'm confident doesn't mean the board would choose an AAP over a referendum. The referendum is a higher standard. It is more expensive, but it's deemed to be the highest standard for our democratic activities. So if that's what the board wanted, off we go. But we certainly want to be thinking about those next steps. Because referendums aren't popular. They tend to lose more often than AAPs. And so for each one of these services, when we switch from either grant and aid or pooled general governance into a service, we need to have the discussion of what we do if a certain outcome occurs, whether it's a yes or whether it's a no. And those will be part of the conversations moving forward. And I want to share that because it's not in this report in great detail. It's not the purpose of this report, but it certainly was part of the discussion in drafting the report at a staff level that we'd want to come back at some point in the future.
I'm really curious about this one too, in particular victim services, because I'm well aware of their budget process. And I know where it says in there, you know, municipality or local government contribution in their budget process. So if we have a service area, then we would be a part of that process, including the end result, whether we approve or not. So I don't know. It's actually opening up a lot of money that we might have to be giving out. And so I'm kind of hesitant about it.
It only opens up the amount of money that the board would agree is the upper limit or a reasonable limit with growth over time in the development of the service. So you have to remember that opening up the path doesn't mean it's a blank check, the blank signed check. The creation of the service creates those limits, creates the area, creates all of those details, and that's where that time goes in, right? There's 80 hours might look like a lot of time, but it goes by quickly. And when you look at who reviews or who's part of a meeting, currently have 4 staff sitting in this room, like very quickly a 2-hour meeting becomes 8 hours of staff time because there's 4 of us here. And so it's important to bear in mind that we would have to have those discussions. And if it's anything like aquatics, we know that when it comes to apportionment and cost, that's a long discussion because it's not easy to get to the obvious solution of who should pay what. And the term equity is nebulous, right? Everyone's going to have their own version of what is equitable for them in the context of everyone else. So it is a rough estimate at 80 hours, depending on the service. Some would be relatively smooth to create, some would be more complex, and some would be interesting duplications, right? So if we look at the Cherry Creek Community Hall and Sprout Lake, 2 very similar services at the end of the day. If we were designing those from scratch, we'd probably do them together and just to gain some efficiencies. Two different service areas, but the same sort of template of work and intent. And so that's what I mean by strategy. And looking at these, it might be useful over time to say, look, in 2026, we want to do these 2 or these 3. We'll put our toe in the water type thing. But in 2027, maybe directing staff to come back with a strategy of similar services that could be done in an effective way.
One more point. When I think of the budget documents that is used for victim services, say we contributed 40,000. It doesn't mean they're going to get more. It means the provincial government will give less. So we need to factor that in.
And through the chair, we need to test that assumption. So that'd be part of the due diligence. How does the province respond to that, right?
Yeah, because you do a bottom-up budget. You have an amount, and how you get there. Yeah, it would just mean less that they pay, more that we pay.
Okay, any more questions for Cynthia before we move on to the next staff report? Director Boyko.
I found the referendum discussion versus AAP quite interesting, that referendums mainly fail, AAPs mainly pass, but getting the best quality data feedback from your constituents and everybody that is paying for us to sit here and talk about these things is the ultimate way to go. We can always move to a Swiss model where everyone votes on 10 or 20 referendums 3 days every year and just power through them and do something like that. And it doesn't have to be costly, and there's a way to do it electronically. And you can get the best bang for your buck for something like that. Currently, they're voting on limiting that population growth. Anyways, side note,
And
thank you.
please go ahead.
Through the chair, Director Boyko, I completely agree. I think if we built in, even if we built into a 5-year budget that every second year in a term, that we budgeted for referendums and we just prepare these services, prepare the education packages, and have them ready for those windows, would be fantastic. And I've got absolutely no problem, making recommendations that the board disagrees with. Like if I recommended an AAP and the board said, no, we want the higher standard, I'm good with that. At the end of the day, it's a good discussion, and where we gain good momentum is if we do place mark things like this. If we did plan ahead, staff can start gearing discussions and reports, and the board can start gearing their discussions to say that would be a great one for the 2027 referendum, and we can start working towards that. And that's just, I think, would be good planning and good teamwork.
Okay, seeing no other questions for Cynthia, we're going to go into the next staff report, Mount Underwood Wildfire After Action Review. Karen, please go ahead.
Thank you. During our response of the Mount Underwood fire, the EOC secured provincial funding to engage with a consultant to complete an after-action review. This was completed on October the 29th, and we wanted to share the report with you to see what was mentioned in our debrief. We held 2 sessions. The first engaged staff from the ACRD and City of Port Alberni. During that session, we really analyzed the EOC operations, the processes, the procedures, and we tried to capture the lessons learned and areas for improvements, as well as some of the things we did well. The second sessions engaged external partners, including First Nations, neighboring jurisdictions, and provincial agencies to capture interagency experiences, our shared challenges, our coordinated strengths, and opportunities for regional collaboration. There was a few highlights that were mentioned throughout the document. Some of our strengths highlighted that we had strong interagency collaboration and cooperation. There was coordination across organizations regarding communication and really aligning our messaging across our region. Another strength identified that we had trained staff and we were ready and prepared and familiar with the EOC, and that our pre-existing relationships across our region really helped us enable rapid coordination, communication, and trust. Our lessons learned highlighted the importance of pre-existing relationships and really reinforcing the need for cross-jurisdictional training. There was a significant strain on staff, and it challenged our regular work plans. Some of the areas of improvement around technology, around building out an EOC SharePoint, and building additional quick reference guides. So this after action review provided us with understanding of what worked well, and maybe making those systems more entrenched, understanding what didn't work well, where changes needed to be made, and areas of improvement where we can focus our work on in the future. So we wanted to provide this opportunity to share what we learned and ask the board whether you would like to proceed with a debrief for the EOC policy group that might focus efforts on understanding lessons learned around government's levels, roles, responsibilities, and we're just looking for your feedback on whether you would like us to pursue a debrief that would include our EOC policy group. And if so, we can chat about the timing and preferred timing along that line. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Karen. Director Boyko.
Thank you very much. I will 100% support a full debrief. And while this event was taking place, I took a bunch of screenshots on social media to prepare for this conversation that's 6 months later. But one thing you said here on page 14 of your report, as the events unfolded, the communication channels proved effective. Public response was overwhelmingly positive. That the updates were clear, steady, and reassuring. So here's some screenshots. I'm not gonna read any names or anything, but just to reiterate what was actually happening. So when we talk about updates to the public, there's multiple ways people get information. There's the ACRD website, there's the ACRD Facebook page, there's Drive BC, BC Wildfire, there's the radio, and Voyant Alert. If these channels do not say the same thing at the same time and change at the same time, it creates confusion and problems. So I'm just going to read a couple of comments that I just screenshotted back in August here. It's also frustrating that BC Wildfire Service website is not showing the evacuation alert either. Someone says it doesn't update automatically. I feel that the new information should be BC's emergency info only, as well as BC Wildfire. One of the directors that's in the room there said, take care. I wrote that one down. Another person said, Voyant Alert is so inaccurate. The tsunami cancellation alert from July 30th is still showing as active, and for the wildfire, it shows 630 hectares. It's hard to trust that this app with inaccuracies. And last one I'm just going to say, it won't load properly on a smartphone, mine at least, and you have to scroll way down to the bottom. The evacuation map is not the actual fire map. The evacuation area is larger due to limited things. Yes, it's just annoying. So I just took these back then just for this discussion, but we need to have further detail on these 6 things that come up, who's responsible for talking to who, how, when they change, and having them all change at the same time. Because if they don't, it creates confusion. People take to Facebook and yell at each other and blah, 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 blah. Is the road open? Is the road closed? Am I evacuating? Whatever else. But we need to be concise and clear on all 6 channels or whatever else comes up. We didn't use X back then. There was a 6-day period right in the middle where there was 0 posts from the ACRD at that time. So if we're not consistent, then the system fails. And I think we can congratulate ourselves because at the end it did get a lot better. But at the start, there was a lot of challenges. So we need to have a proper learning, and because something else is going to happen next week, next month, next year. And we just got to be ready for it. Thank you.
I think it was a real learning curve, but I feel that there was a lot of fires, a lot of things going on all at the same time. And it was really difficult for everybody to do everything all at the same time because you've got 100 different things coming at you at once. Did you want to respond to that, Karen, or do you have anything that you'd like to say?
I would just respond with, I agree, Fred, or Director Boyko, sorry, that is our goal, is to align our communication and have it go out as smoothly as possible. It is challenging. And one of the things that was mentioned in the after-act review is that different agencies work at different cadences around their communication, which makes it challenging to align our communications with other agencies as well. I can assure you that efforts were made to do so and to try to make sure that all of our communication methods and channels, we do try to also limit the number of, we do try to stick to our website, try to Facebook page as well as Voyant Alert, to try to make sure that we're aligning those specifically rather than using too many platforms that would make it really challenging. Voyant Alert is something that goes out at one moment in time, and it's not necessarily updated with as the fire map changes, and those change fairly regularly as BC Wildfire puts out that information. That doesn't get updated on Voyant Alert. Voyant Alert is more of a static, this is the problem that's happening right now, providing information and then redirecting people to the Facebook pages, which are a little bit more flexible and nimble around updates and changes. So the ideal is to make sure that the communication is all aligned and it all is the same. I agree. It is very challenging to do so.
Thank you. Daniel has a comment.
Just wanted to add that I think this is why in the report we're indicating that it would really be beneficial then to have a debrief with this group, with the board and with the policy group, just to talk about those details, right? And to make sure that we continue to focus on the things that matter. And I think having your perspective is vital to that. And so what I'm hearing is great comments that we should bring back at a debrief with elected officials. I know in earlier meetings when we talked, Director Sparrow had very good feedback, and yes, it's been 6 months since the fire, but not 6 months since the end of the actual EOC activation. So it would be really nice to have a debrief together, is what I'm hearing and thinking.
Do we need a motion for that? Because I'll make that right now.
Yes, we do need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to have a full debrief, and everyone can look at their personal experiences, where they were, whether they're in Banfield and cut off and told that the businesses need to shut down, whether they were stuck somewhere and couldn't drive somewhere, or their power went out for extended period of time, or they had a trucking in food, or everything like that, and come together and say, there were decisions that were made, there was lots of stuff happening, but this will happen again. So we need to be prepared for having proper discussion. And I don't know if this needs to be like a separate thing, but this should be public as well, because the directors that are here can go out, gather more information here in the next month or two, whatever. And if they haven't saved stuff like I have, then they can go back and look at it at the time stamps and see what was there. So I'll make a motion to let's do that. Thank you.
Moved by Director Boyko, second by Director Roth. We have Director Beckett that would like to comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In my previous profession, I would conduct formal critiques on any major incident that we were responding to, on incidents regardless of the size, if things didn't go well, so we could learn from them, and from smaller incidents where someone did something really, really well that we wanted to share with the team. And so early on in this incident, I made it abundantly clear that we would need to do a critique so that we could determine what those lessons were. And when I read the report, and I was grateful that our CAO and staff took the initiative to get this initial evaluation underway and finished, because this was just the start. The report, when it talks about the good communication, I must admit I struggled with that because it wasn't perfect. There were issues that I can certainly speak to. I'm not going to today because we obviously, hopefully we pass this motion and we do our due diligence and we have some more discussion. But it wasn't perfect. And to that end, during the 3 in-person meetings that we had in the community where ACRD staff and provincial organizations that were involved in this incident came to our community, we talked about the fact that there would be a critique. We identified that we would be reaching out to the community, and Daniel and staff will be coming to Banfield.
I don't know if we hear us, Director Beckett, but you're frozen and we can't hear you. While we wait for Director Beckett, we'll go to Director Cote. Hope he can get back online.
Thank you. I support having a debrief. I think it would, it was good to talk to the emergency group after the Dog Mountain fire, and I see great strides in what the regional district is doing now. I think we've learned from experience, and from this report, I have questions in it, so I'd love to bring them up. I don't really want to have a discussion on them today, but I just, from what I'm reading here, it's like, is there a problem with timely getting money? Was there anything that we should have been doing that we didn't because we didn't have funding in place? And where are we with the recovery? I'm quite concerned about that. So when we do have this meeting, I'd like to know if staff will be coming forward with any recommendations. Thank you.
I'm sure they will be. Yes. Director Beckett, are you back online? I see your hand raised, but there's no picture of you. Okay, so we'll just move on. There is a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion for a full review? Or full, any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Now we're on to air reports. I know Director Coutts has a meeting shortly that she has to leave. I was wondering if I could move her up first. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just going to take a step back. I need a motion that the Board of Directors receive the staff reports A and B. Moved by Director Roth. Second by Director Cote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. I know Director Coutts has to leave shortly, so I was wondering if I could like to move her up to first for area reports, and then she can leave if she would like to go to her next meeting. And apologies, I didn't think it would be quite this late, but please go ahead if you have a report.
No, no worries at all. Thank you, Madam Chair. And it'll be easy cheesy for everybody. No report today. Kaka.
Thank you. So now we go to Electoral Area 8, Banfield. Are you still there, Director Beckett? No, he's gone. Director Boyko for Beaufort, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. It's a nice sunny day out here. Everybody's going well at Beaufort. I'm hearing lots of questions about how much our potential tax increases are going to be this year, considering, you know, Qualicum's at 8% or something and the city's at 5 or 6%. But we've already added $70,000 to hire a lobbyist for the road and $100,000 for a potential city or civic, what do you want to call it, healthcare center. But I'll challenge the CAO and the 14 managers at the ACRD to come up with where we're going to make cuts to potential services or other things to make up for this $170,000 that we've added moving forward. Thank you.
We are having a budget discussion tomorrow, so I think that's a good question for tomorrow morning. Okay, Director Beckett, I saw your face. Now you're gone again.
I should be here.
There you are. I see you now.
Sorry.
Did you have an air report, Director Beckett?
Yes, I did. And I apologize. I believe I probably didn't deliver what I wanted to say regarding the after action review. Did you hear me or did I get cut off?
We heard most of it, but I'm not sure if you were quite finished or not.
Well, I won't go on other than yes, there are things that we need to discuss and explore. We need to celebrate what we did well, and we need to identify and be transparent with lessons learned. And I'll leave it at that. Did I mention or did you hear me say that we will be conducting a staff led review in person in Banfield and Anakla regarding this? Perfect. Then you know what? Yes. I'll just skip right down to my report. I was going to talk about the after action review. Pleased that we're moving forward with that. March 6th, there is a ribbon cutting for the submarine water line going from the east side to the west side at 11 a.m. At the end of Banfield Road. And that's a relief for all the folks on the west side. Daniel and Mike Erg and myself have been communicating with Transport Canada regarding Transport Canada's desire to divest the west side dock. As a result of those conversations, Transport Canada has agreed to provide the funding to do an engineering assessment, which will be done this Friday. And it's really clear that, or it needs to be clear that this is Transport Canada's initiative to divest of this asset. And ACRD is doing an excellent job in taking the steps necessary to do our due diligence recognizing A, the value of the asset, and B, the potential liability for the community. You know, I'm already seeing things in social media that are not accurate, and you know, we're forging ahead and making sure that we don't inherit something that is again a liability for our community. At the same time, always exploring other opportunities. And that is my report. Thank you.
And just in case you weren't aware, the motion did pass to do a full review. Area C, Long Beach, Director Sika, please.
Thank you very much. First, in response to the initial petition not to have the bus service through Millstream and the theft and removal of the bus stop sign in Millstream, 70 residents have signed a petition to keep the bus stop in Millstream now. The poor road conditions in rural developments out here are meaning that waste collection is difficult or impossible. So that's being looked at. There are trees growing between the bike path and the road that are causing bumps on the bike path. And let me see, anything else that's been brought forward? I did attend the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust Regional Forum, and the CBT has obtained its building permit for their center, and there was really good sharing of information. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Area D, Sprout Lake, Director Cote.
Thank you, Chair. So Sprout Lake is been in the fog for days. Come to Port Alberni and get out of the fog. Right now we have a board supported meeting Monday, February 23rd. The ACRD will be presenting the budget and services to the Sprout Lake community, a community affair meeting. I've also been working on a newsletter this week that will be coming out next week for Sprout Lake area. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Area E, Beaver Creek, Director Roth.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Area F, Cherry Creek, Director Sparrow.
Thank you for that. Not much to report. I did get a newsletter about Cherry Creek Fire Hall construction update. They say they're on budget. And if you read further down here, they are going to retain the existing hall for long-term and non-essential storage. And we're able to reduce the overall size of the new building, resulting in savings. And they're going to use the 2 center bays to convert it into indoor training space. So I assume some of the old fire apparatus will be in the old building as they don't have enough space in the new building now. Thank you.
Thank you. City of Port Alberni, Director Minnan, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Just that we have passed our financial plan. It is an increase of around 6%. We haven't done yet our tax rate bylaw, so we don't know at this point exactly how that will break down between the different classes, how it will ultimately fall for residential taxpayers. We may reassign our classes somewhat in the splits within them, but that will be a conversation upcoming. And I should also say that our new CAO, Andrew McGifford, has started in his role. We're really happy to have him in place. And our former deputy director of finance has now moved into the director of finance role. Thank you.
Thank you. District of Tofino, Director Steer.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Well, congratulations, Port Alberni, because yesterday's council meeting, that's all we're talking about right now is budget. We're not quite there yet, so more work to be done there. So that's been the prime focus right now of council and staff.
Thank you. District of Ucluelet, Director McEwen.
Thank you, Chair. Last night at our council meeting, as I mentioned, we passed the wildlife attractant bylaw, which will give our bylaw officer some clout for fining people that are leaving garbage out, especially because of our bear problem. We also gave first and second reading to a company called Ekistics, which are looking to build 85 homes on High Focus Island. And so that will now go to public hearing for the next step. And we awarded our skate park expansion contract last night as well. And the recipient has promised to have that expansion done by June, which is great for everybody that wants to skate. That's it for me.
Thank you. To Coordination, Director Johnson.
Afternoon. We are also in the throes of budgeting, and that's about all I can report on right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Utility Government, Director Mastangelo.
Good afternoon. Nothing too serious to report. I do have an update for one of our community assets that's getting replaced, and that's just a new lift station that's been outdated for or past its 25 years. So that's good. And our CAO has maintained and continued in the role, and just another warm welcome to him as well. His name is Sunny Dollywall, and that's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Could I motion that the Board of Directors receive the area reports? Moved by Director Cote, seconded by Director Sparrow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Did you have a question, Director Cote?
No, I didn't announce any unfinished or late business at the beginning, but I just wanted to mention about nominations for AVICC.
Want to do that now?
I would love to do that now. I would encourage anyone from the ACRD, whether it be on the board here or with the City of Port Alberni or Ucluelet or Tofino, or any First Nations, if you're interested in putting your name forward for the executive for AVICC, I would encourage you. The deadline is February the 12th, which would be tomorrow. But we are having a meeting tomorrow. So I would be happy to sign anyone's nomination papers. You need 2 people to sign. And if you're here at the board, I'm sure that staff could email off your application. Thank you. Please, somebody run.
Thank you for that, Director Cote. Okay, no, that's for unfinished business, so no late business. And any questions online, Cynthia?
Okay, we have no one here in the gallery, no questions received through email and none through Zoom.
Did you have a last comment, Director Boyko?
Yeah, I just want to have some last minute business here. I'd like to make a notice of motion. I'm going to email all the directors right now. But
just a moment, please. I just want to see if that's legal. Can he do a notice of motion at the end when it's not? Or is that supposed to be done at the beginning?
Yeah, the notice of motion should have been included in the adoption of the agenda.
well, then I will add it to next meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so just a notice that the Committee of Whole meeting will be held tomorrow at 9 o'clock for a presentation on the 2026 to 2030 draft financial plan. Always riveting. At 9 o'clock. Okay, a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Sparrow. All in favor? None opposed. Motion is carried. We'll see everybody at first thing tomorrow morning. Good night.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.